All right, so probably one of the more important things that you'll need to be able to do for next year when you take Math Connections, if you're not currently taking Math Connections, is to be able to change a percent into a decimal and decimal into a percent. I'm throwing fractions in there too because they just kind of go together. That's messed up. That should be 9.5. There we go. So I'm just going to kind of run you through the process. It's not hard at all. None of this is. About the hardest thing you'll have to do is to be able to reduce a fraction. And they're not going to be big, hard fractions to work with. So let's dig in. All right, so first things first, changing a fraction into a decimal. What you have to realize is that a fraction is just another way to write division. So when I write 3/4, what I'm actually saying is 3 divided by 4. Okay, that's what these are. There was a movement a while back for math teachers to start calling them decimal fractions because, well, but that was just confusing, so I never did it. So this actually means 3 divided by 4. And to change a fraction into a decimal, that's what you do. I'm going to do my little scratch work over here. I'm going to take 3 and I'm going to divide it by 4. Well, 4 doesn't go into 3, so that means decimals. But 4 does go into 30. 4 goes into 30 7 times. That's 28. Subtract, and there I get a 2. Add another 0 and bring it down. 4 goes into 20 5 times. Right? So as a decimal, 3/4 is, and I'm going to put that leading 0 in there just so we don't lose the decimal point. It's a little bit easier to see the decimal point when you've got that 0 kind of drawing your attention. Okay, and that's it. You just divide them out. To change a fraction to a decimal, you divide numerator by denominator. Top number divided by bottom number. Same thing here. This means literally 2 divided by 5. So out here, I'm going to take 2 and I'm going to divide it by 5. 5 doesn't go into 2, so I'm going to add a decimal point and a 0. 5 does go into 20 4 times, evenly, might I add. So you're done. So 2/5 is 2 divided by 4, which is 0.4. That's it. I'm not going to throw any like repeating decimals out there, like where you take, if I were to do 1/3, you guys probably, some of you might know that that's 0.3 repeating. If I take 1 and divide it by 3, I just get stuck in a loop where I'm dividing by 3 and dividing by 3 and dividing by 3. So I won't throw those out there at you. But if a problem slips by me and 1 comes across, it's okay. Repeating decimals, they're a thing. You've dealt with them before. Okay, moving on. Changing a decimal into a fraction. This is easy to do, and then you have to follow up by reducing your fraction. So if you know your place names, this is super easy. If you don't, it's still pretty easy. This is 25/100ths because the last digit is in the 100ths place. So if you know those places, that's your fraction. 25/100ths. It is just 25 over 100. Now, that's if you know your names. If you don't know your names, it's pretty straightforward too. There are 2 decimal places here, so I need 2 zeros over here. Okay, so again, if you don't know the names, that's what you're doing. It's always 1 and then some zeros because our numbering system is based on 10. We have 10 fingers. So that's what we're doing here. We're basing our fractions on tens. You just have to make sure whether it's 10, 100, 1,000, 10,000, whatever. And that comes down to how many decimal places is equal to how many zeros. Now, after that, I'd like you to reduce these. So numerator and denominator are both divisible by 5. So 25, I'm going to divide out that 5. That's going to leave it as a 5. And 100 divided by 5. That is 20. Now that's going to reduce again by 5s. Now, if you saw something bigger to take out from the start, that's fine. I went this route for a reason. Okay, so 0.25, 25/100ths, changing that to a fraction, 25 over 100, and then just reduce it as far as you can. And if you go back and do the previous process, 1 divided by 4, guess what the decimal is? 0.25. Okay, so 5/10ths, if you know the name, but 5 over 1 with 1 0 because there's 1 place here. Reduce that guy, both divisible by 5 again. I think I accidentally started a theme here where everything's divisible by 5. That's going to reduce down to 1/2, which most of you probably know. 1/2 and 0.5, those are the same thing. 125 thousandths. So 125 on top, and then again 1, 2, 3 places here. So 1, 1, 2, 3 zeros. Okay, again, divide. This time I'm going to go by 25 because it's a little bit bigger. I'm dividing by 25. That is 5. Yeah, 125 divided by 5 is 0. And then 40 on bottom. Right, 1,000 divided by 25. And then that's going to reduce again. Oh, look, by 5. Pick the wrong numbers. It's not always going to be 5, guys. Okay, that's 1/8. Okay, again, if you take 1 divided by 8, 0.125. All right, the last one. This is the most important one. Okay, most of you that are in algebra, I will see next year in Math Connections. Some of you are taking Math Connections currently. We deal with percents all the time. We've been doing percent operations. We've been working with percents forever, literally all year. So to change a decimal into a percent, I want to take 2 seconds and talk about this word, percent. And I spaced that out on purpose. Percent. It means for every 100. Okay, so the word percent means per 100. So 45% is 45 per 100. That is your fraction. Okay, 45, and I'm not asking you to turn these into fractions. I'm doing this one as an example. So 45 out of 100. Okay, now if you go back and do what we just did, right, kind of in reverse, if you take the decimal and turn it into a fraction into a decimal, that means to divide that out. I'm going to take 45 and divide it by 100. What that does is those 2 zeros mean that this should be turned into something with 2 decimal places. So 45% turns into, I'm going to put that 0 in there again, 0.45. What happens, and the shortcut I've been taking since forever, is you find the decimal point in your percent. Right here, it would be kind of at the end of the 5, and it gets moved 2 places to the left. Okay, changing percents into decimals, move your decimal point 2 places to the left. Now, it's always 2 places, always. But that doesn't mean that your answer has 2 decimal places in it, because if you started with a 1-digit number or something with a decimal, you're going to kind of have to fill in some gaps here. So 32% is going to become 0.32. Now, here's one that I was talking about, 3%. I don't have 2 numbers to just slide that decimal point in front of, so I can add zeros in here. So 3% becomes 0.03, or 3/100ths if you say it. So 3/100ths, 3% per 100, all kind of comes together. 2.5%, 2 places to the left, so I'm going to fill in the gap with a 0. So 0.25. And there are such things as decimal percents. Those of you that are currently in Math Connections, when we start doing, loans where there's like 3.5% loans, things like that, there's a lot of those. See that sign on my door? Okay, just blow right through it.
I didn't comprehend.
Anyway, student just walked in. They can't read. All right, so I moved that decimal point 2 places to the left, and that's it. Percents to decimals.